things are in listen-only mode.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm ready.
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. Are we ready to begin?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Space Coast Transportation Governing Board meeting. This 21:30. Next will be if you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
Unmuted.
Mayor, are you there?
All right, so Georgiana, are you ready? All right, so Georgiana, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. Space Coast. Okay. There, it's coming in now. All right. I'm Brevard, Executive Director of the SCTPO. Our agency has authority to hold a virtual meeting pursuant to Executive Order Number 20-69 issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20th, 2020, and Executive Order Number 20-193, which extends that order. The TPO may conduct meetings at its governing board and its committees without having a quorum of its members present physically and utilizing communications media technology. So some members of the TPO governing board are attending in person and some members are appearing remotely. With regard to access to the meeting, the agency is using GoToWebinar. This is a cloud-based platform for video and audio conferencing, collaboration, and chat across mobile devices, desktops, and telephones. TPO has developed several methods of ensuring public comment for this virtual meeting. A complete listing of the public comment process and how to attend in person or virtually is provided on TPO's website at www.sctpo.com. The TPO will be posting a recording of the meeting via its YouTube channel as well. If you are attending virtually, you may raise your hand or enter your request to speak via the GoToWebinar chat question box either during public comment or at the time the agenda item is discussed. Once recognized by the chair, your microphone will be unmuted and you will be given 3 minutes for comment. If you have attended the meeting in person, you may fill out a speaker's card and turn it in to a staff member. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah to go over just a few housekeeping items before we get started.
Great. Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Crom, the Senior Transportation Planner for the Space Coast TPO. Today, if you are attending virtually as a governing board, many of you can communicate and participate with us in several ways. You can mute and unmute yourself as you would like to make comments. We do ask that if you are not actively speaking, to please keep yourself muted. You may also utilize the chat box if you are unable to mute or feel more comfortable that way. For the voting process today, motions will be taken either verbally or via the chat box, either in person or go through the GoToWebinar platform. If you do not issue a vote and you are online, it will be assumed that you voted in favor or approval. So once again, if you do not submit a vote and you are online, it will be assumed that you voted in favor or approval. Also, please silence all cell phones and other noise-making devices.
All right. Mayor Meehan, I think at this time we can go ahead and ask Laura to do quorum and roll call.
Yeah, thank you, Georgiana. Let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Thank you, Chair. This is Laura Carter. I will be calling out the names that are physically present in the room first, and then I will go online, and as I call your name, I would ask that you unmute yourself and say here, so we make sure that we are able to communicate with you. So in the room physically present today, we have Jerry Allender, here. Yvonne Meyer, here. Jake Williams, here. Andrea Young, here. And then on the alternates, we also have Nikki Kellum, here, and Lorraine Haas, here. Did I miss anybody physically here as a board member? Okay, moving to virtual. Again, please unmute yourself as I call your name and say here so that we can make sure we can hear you. Frank Forrester.
Here.
Christine Isnardi.
Here.
Here. Kenny Johnson.
Here. Here.
Brian Lober.
Here.
Here.
We can see him.
Kathy Meehan.
Here.
Here.
James Nolan.
Here.
Yeah.
Here.
And Kurt Smith. Commissioner Smith, you are self-muted. Are you able to unmute?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. I'm here.
Thank you. If I missed anybody virtually, please let me know via the chat box or unmute yourself and let us know that you're present. Okay, apparently we got everybody, and that does establish quorum. So I turn it back over to you, Chair.
Right. Thank you, Laura. Let's go under public.
Let's go under.
Laura, do you want to do the description?
Do you want to do the
We'll check to see if there's any sign up.
Under public.
See if there's any sign up.
Yes, Madam Chair. We have, I believe Georgiana covered that in our introduction on how the public may participate. At this time, we do not have any regular public comments, nor have we received anything ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go in. Agenda. The reports. 4A is Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to go over a few items. The Executive Director's report is on page 2 of your agenda package. I wanted to mention that we participated in a collaborative video for the 4th Avenue Complete Street project. And the project was a funding partnership with the City of Cocoa and the Space Coast TPO. And it really highlights the importance of complete streets for safety, economics, and for the community. And it really was the vision of the City of Cocoa to want to extend the Cocoa Village to the west. Peachtree Street was another complete street project that was done for the community. And so we just wanted to highlight that project. We have, the TPOs has been funding partners for several complete street projects, also included with the City of Melbourne. And so we would like to highlight and elevate those projects a lot more. So we were very happy to be a part of that. I wanted to let you know that the TPO's Transportation Subcommittee met last week to discuss federal funding and how it is being used on our list of priority projects. We discussed the revenue estimating conference report from Tallahassee, and it was released a couple of weeks ago, and there was a hit to the DOT work program and a negative $1.4 billion. That is a cash hit. And this is due to increased consumption in fuel and of course changes in vehicle technology. That is very significant. I think we all knew it was coming, but that is certainly a punch in the guts, so to speak, when it comes to our projects and how we're going to move things forward in the coming years. Just don't know if the revenue drops have bottomed out or what the long-term impacts are going to be. With a shift towards permanent teleworking in some industries, it really does present a challenge. There's a lot of unknowns there. But on the other hand, with the reduced traffic volumes, there's also a potential to maybe take a step back and look at traffic volumes and patterns and look maybe at the transportation system more holistically. So you have to look for the silver linings in some of these things that is happening. I also wanted to mention our current surface transportation law, which is the FAST Act, the bill that we've been operating under, expires on September the 30th. And we have, of course, we all know we have a very divided Congress. We will probably not get a new bill. They will most likely just do extensions. But when we do get a new bill, we don't know what is going to be in it. Will there be a replacement for the fuel tax and increased federal investment in transportation and perhaps more flexibility in transit projects so you can use the funding for other areas such as transit and have that flexibility other than just surface transportation. So we look forward to that, and stay tuned as everything moves forward after the election. Also in your package, you have the public engagement report and a summary of all the transportation related bills that were signed into law by the governor. That's just for your reference. And finally, Space Coast Area Transit provided maps on their new 2020 routes and a report from the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board. And I know Scott Nelson is here if you have any questions about that. Very good information that our committees was very interested in. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report at this time.
Thank you, Georgiana. Is there any questions for Georgiana?
Is there any questions for Georgiana?
All right. Seeing none, we'll go to 4B. The Technical Advisory Committee, Citizen Advisory Committee, report. Georgiana.
The Technical and Citizens Advisory Committees met separately this Tuesday. In your handout box or at your place, you have a summary of actions and attendance from the meeting. Both committees recommended the TPO approve the consent agenda, approved the fiscal year 21 through 25 roll forward TIP amendment, adopted the 2045 long range transportation plan, and they also approved resolution supporting the Indian River Brevard regional trail alignment. And that is it. Back to you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Georgiana. I need a motion.
Thank you, Georgiana. I need a motion.
4B.
4B.
So moved. So moved.
Laura, do you have the motion approval in the second?
Motion approval in the second.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any discussion?
All right. Any discussion?
All right. Seeing none, I guess we'll need a roll call.
All right. Seeing none, I guess we'll need a roll call.
Madam Chair, we will not need a roll call vote for that item.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't know how we're going to know who voted for it.
You're going to do a roll call? Okay. All right. Okay. My apologies. Thank you.
Taylor?
Yes.
Forrester?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Isnardi?
Yes.
Yes. Kenny Johnson?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Lober?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Meehan,
Yes. Yes.
Minus,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes. Yes.
Jake Williams,
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
And Cullum.
Yes.
Did I get everybody?
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Let's go to 4C.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's go to
Pedestrian and Trails Advisory Committee report, and that is Sarah Crum.
All right, good afternoon. Once again, I'm Sarah Crum, the Senior Transportation Planner. Bicycle Pedestrian and Trails Advisory Committee met on August 31st. And they received a presentation regarding the Vision Zero master plan, and they will be adopting that, or they moved to approve this, and that committee, and that will be coming to this board in October. They also approved the LRTP, which you will be seeing a presentation on shortly today. They received the same school route analysis that will be shared at the end of the meeting. And then also they wanted to share something happening in trails with the Fire Department of Transportation and the SCTPO Fire Department of Environmental Protection. They developed a new trail safety program. And essentially they created several posters and handouts to promote trail safety, which is at this time, as you know, our trails and our bicyclists and our pedestrians have greatly increased over the last 6 months, with people kind of rediscovering the outdoors since we couldn't be inside with other people, and it brought on this new flush of activity with our bikes and our pets. And so they developed posters and brochures, and also a really nice trail safety video that I'd like to show for you guys at this time. Hang on. Just 1 second.
How are they distributing the posters?
I don't think they're actually distributing them in person, Maureen, you know. Is, I can email the Sun Trails program director, but I believe that it's just basically you can go on and download them and print them yourselves, which we'd be happy to print posters for any board or committee member that would like to have printed copies. If you can just shoot me an email.
Yeah, I think we'd want to place them in parks.
Yeah, I'd be happy to get you printed copies. Going the email. I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Right, is there any question?
Is there any question?
All right, seeing none, let's go to 4D, which is the SCTPO Executive Committee Report. Georgiana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Executive Committee met on August the 20th to review the Executive Director evaluation, performance evaluation results. And they recommended approval of my evaluation along with a one-time bonus. Mr. Gugelman will provide a summary of these actions on the agenda item a little bit later on. And that'll do it.
All right, thank you, Georgiana. Let's go
All
to
right, thank you, Georgiana. Let's go
the
to
Florida Department of Transportation report, and that will be Anna Taylor.
Anna Taylor.
Anna, are you there?
Chair, can you hear me?
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
I'm going to be giving the DOT report today. Your construction. Sorry, there's really bad feedback. Report is in your packet. I also wanted to let you know that Jamie Kersey is no longer working within the MPO liaison group. She accepted a position still at DOT in another unit. So we're very excited for her and we wish her the best. In the meantime, I'll be filling in. So if there's anything that I can do to assist, please don't hesitate to reach out. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Any questions for Anna?
Okay, thank you, Anna.
All right.
Unmuted.
All right, seeing none, let's go to
All
the
right,
agenda.
none,
That will be Georgiana.
That will be Georgiana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll read the consent agenda. You can consider passing in one motion. 5A is the TPO Governing Board minutes of July 9th, 2020. 5B is committee appointments. 5C is finance and budget, adoption of the fiscal year 21 operating budget, and also acknowledgement of our fiscal year 20 third quarterly report. 5D is the interlocal agreement with Brevard County Board of County Commissioners. And 5E is a resolution to adopt the Central Florida MPO Alliance fiscal year 21 regional prioritized project lists. There have been no changes on our regional lists. Ellis Road widening remains the #1 priority for the region, the Central Florida MPO Alliance. So that is the consent agenda for your consideration.
Thank you, Georgiana. Any, so I need a motion.
Motion approved.
All right, I have a motion and a second.
All right, I have a motion and a second and
Discussion.
discussion.
Seeing none, all right. We'll
Seeing
go
none,
ahead
all
and take
right,
roll call.
We'll go ahead and take roll call.
Consent. Allender,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Forrester,
Yes. Yes.
Isnardi,
Yes.
Yes. Johnson, Kenny Johnson,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Lover,
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Meehan,
Yes.
Yes.
Minus. Yes. Nolan. Nolan.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith,
Yes. Yes.
Jake Williams, Young, Cullum. Okay, did I get everyone? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Next is our A, approval of the resolution 21-05, fiscal year 25 transportation improvement program, which we call the so Georgiana's going to report on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is really a housekeeping item. Each year, the DOT develops a tentative 5-year work program that becomes effective on July 1st. The TPO incorporates the tentative work program into our new transportation improvement program, which is also effective July 1st. Year 1 of the TIP and the work program should always match. However, when the new TIP and the work program become effective, there are often projects that were supposed to get authorized prior to June 30th, but did not. So these projects will automatically just roll forward into the work program, but not in the TIP. So hence there is this need to reconcile the two documents and bring the TIP up to date. So in your package, you have a long list of projects that is considered the roll forward report that will be included in the new TIP. And along with the roll forward TIP amendment, we have 2 additional TIP amendments that the DOT has requested. One is the Cape Canaveral Spaceport Indian River Bridge ITS project, Intelligent Transportation System. This is for $500,000 for design in fiscal year 2021. And this is the technology to manage traffic flow in and out of the spaceport. And this is a component of the new NASA Causeway Indian River Bridge replacement that Space Florida received a grant for. And then 2 is federal highway new funding under the Federal Lands Transportation Program. And these projects are listed on page 83 and 84 of your package. So we are asking for approval of resolution 2105, amending our new fiscal year 21 through 25 transportation improvement program. And we need that via roll call vote as well.
All right, thank you, Georgiana. I need a motion and a
Second.
all right, I have a motion and a second, and let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Hunter,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Forrester,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Isnardi,
Yes.
Yes.
Kenny Johnson,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Lober,
Yes. Yes.
Meehan,
Yes.
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes. Yes.
Williams, Jake
Yes.
Williams, thank you. Young, Cullum.
Yes.
Did I get everyone?
All right, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Let's go to item 6B, adopt the resolution 21-06, which is the 2045 long-range transportation plan. And Stephen Bostel will report on that.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for all being here on this historic day. It's only once every 5 years that this body gets to adopt the long-range transportation plan. So thank you. And so I'm just going to go over a quick overview on how we got here on adoption day and go over some public comments. And just a quick reminder, and that in case you forgot from the last, I don't know, 15 times I presented, we're still working towards the 2060 vision. And we developed in the 2040 long-range transportation plan, we developed these 3 key themes to leverage what is uniquely Brevard by investing in our ports and continuing our focus on the high-tech industry, to preserve what is uniquely Brevard by creating some more compact communities and having less reliance on autos, and to provide more community and travel choices by providing a wider variety of housing and more travel options. And so keep in mind, that is the 2060 vision. We've got a long way to go to get there, but that is what we're working towards. And so here's all of the different moving pieces that went into developing the long-range plan. As you can see, there are a lot of different steps, and we're here at the home stretch after 2 years of development. And then if you recall, one of the key things that came out of our cost feasible development exercise was that we had some funds that we set aside for these box fund programs. These are all programs where a lot of the work has been done to develop specific plans for intelligent transportation systems, bicycle and pedestrian facilities, transit facilities, a lot of the different study implementations that FDOT has done and the TPO has done, and for safety improvements. And if you notice, there's a specific amount set aside in 5-year increments throughout the plan's time frame. And then, of course, we have all of our capacity projects, which haven't changed since they've been presented to you last, because we did present those earlier in the year. And we've had the cost feasible plan out for public comment since June. We have received no significant comments related to the cost feasible plan, other than just one minor one that I'll get into here in just a little bit. And so we posted the long range plan document online for public comment on August 11th to adhere to make sure we met our public review timeline. We also sent 17 hard copies of the plan document and the full appendices out to all of the Brevard County libraries, so that those without internet access had access to the document and could send in comments. We have a gentleman, Mr. Plotnicki, he sent us some great comments. Thanks for joining us today. And the plan is available online in draft form, and we will have the final plan adopted or posted with all of the minor narrative adjustments and edits 90 days after adoption. And so we didn't receive any significant public comments on the draft cost feasible plan that was posted on June 1st. We did receive one from the Florida Department of Transportation in relation to the draft cost feasible plan, and that's specifically on an I-95 widening that is in the current CIS cost feasible plan in further out years. We didn't include that in our current draft cost feasible plan just because there was some kind of some technical back and forth on whether or not that'll be feasible or not. But so that will most likely come back before you as an amendment to the long range plan in our next meeting. So we can make sure we adhere to the public comment period to get that in there. And then we'll update it as well as the CIS changes in the future. And then we did receive some, not comment on the cost feasible plan, but on the plan document itself from the Vieira company regarding the line that we showed, the connection from Pineda Causeway West to Osceola County. We showed that proposed future western connection going through the Vieira DRI. That is not accurate. CFX is under study right now where it would make sense for that connection to occur. And so we'll be taking that out of the maps in the long range plan. And then another comment from the Florida Department of Transportation was to include language for the Indian River Lagoon National Scenic Byway. All of the corridors on that byway are in the long-range plan, but specifically to call that out will help that group pursue future grant opportunities. I think I covered all of them. And then so, even though we're proposing adoption today, we're far from finished. I can go back to that slide. We're going to be working with your local agencies to develop agency action plans with all your local planners to see what tools might be helpful to work towards that 2060 vision, whether it be land use changes, policy changes for electric vehicles, things of that nature. And another cool thing that came out of the whole long range plan process is for the first time we had a specific environmental review meeting. And so as a recommendation from that group, we're going to be having an annual meeting with them in conjunction with our project priorities development process. And so each year we'll be able to bring those groups to the table and have them take an environmental closer look at all of our proposed projects moving forward, maybe identify some unique solutions that haven't been thought of, or also potentially create some new partnerships and have other groups that might be able to bring something to the table as well. And then so we will be following up with all of your agency staff to work on all of the different plans that are out there, because the long range plan is, it brings a lot of these different plans together, and we don't want everything to just sit on the shelf. So we'll be following up to try to see how we can move some things forward, like Vision Zero, the bicycle pedestrian master plan, ADA study. Just still got a lot of work to do. And one thing that I did leave off the slide it's kind of changed significantly with the situation that we're in is, in my prior presentations, I mentioned, other potential revenue sources to fund transportation. And one of them was the gas tax, but there's others as well. But I believe due to the situation that we're really going to see a huge change in the revenue forecast that we were given here 2-3 years ago, that this whole plan is based off of. And so that's the best information we have now today to adopt this plan. But it's really something that really everyone needs to be considering, how we tackle some of these challenges in the future. And I feel like I'm leaving something else out. But with that, it's a very exciting day. And again, that is not me, little character. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Any questions for Stephen? All right, seeing none, I need approval. To adopt resolution 21-0.
Second.
All right, I hear a motion and a second. Discussion, any discussion? All right, seeing none, I need a roll call.
Callender,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Forrester,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Nardi,
Yes.
Kenny Johnston,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Linger,
Yes. Yes.
Meehan,
Yes.
Minus,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes. Yes.
Jake Williams,
Yes.
Young. Yes. Cullen.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, and thank you again to all of the TPO staff, our consultant team on Kittleson, Travis Hills, and to all of your planning staff. Make sure you thank them because they've all been great to work with, and all the municipalities have had a big role in all of this. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Next will be the 6C, approval of the Resolution 21-07 Indian River and Brevard Regional Trail Alignment, and that will be Sarah Crum.
All right. All right, so about a year ago, we started coordinating with the Indian River County NPO, which is in a different FDOT district and also obviously a different county, with the thought of developing a regional trail alignment to connect the two planning areas. As you know, the Space Coast TPO, we are very pro-trail, we're very active in trails, especially through the Sun Trails program with FDOT. And the Indian River County MPO is also very active in trails as well. So it just kind of made sense to start coordinating and think about how can we connect the two counties. So through that, we sat down and we developed a trail map thinking about how can we connect regional trail or showcase trails that both areas already have. And so we developed an alignment that connects the Trans-Florida Central Railroad Trail, the Brevard Zoo Trail, the South Brevard El Tuttle Trail, existing trails in the St. John's Water Management Conservation areas, as well as also potentially the East Coast Greenway. So today we are seeking approval of a joint resolution with Indian River County NPO to elevate this trail and hopefully get it designated into statewide maps. And basically the benefits for adopting the resolution and the development of the trail could include that once we get them on statewide maps, that potentially open us up to other funding sources that could actually help with implementation, such as specific state, trail funds. It also creates regional connectivity, which is very positive for tourism and economic growth. It encourages citizens to live healthier lives in both counties and can really benefit just the overall happiness of both the Brevard County and Indian River County residents and tourists. So I do have Jim Mann is with Indian River County MPO is on the line. He presented this to his governing board yesterday and they did approve the resolution. And Jim, if you'd like to say anything, we can unmute you, or you can unmute yourself rather. Which he was really the brains and the tech behind this, as he developed the maps, and it was really his vision to get this going. So I give all credit to Jim.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that. So it's been exciting to work together on this project, and our board passed this unanimously. This is a great project for the two counties because it connects two different DOT districts, two different MPO TPO districts, and two different counties all in one shot. And it also can open up future funding for implementation, as you said, for these trails to progress. And we've been so excited to work with you on this. And thank you so much for the consideration.
Great, thank you, Jim. And so with that, I would get the slide. There we go. I'd like to request approval via resolution of the Indian River County NPO and Space Coast TPO Regional Trail Alignment.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So I need a motion in a second.
Madam Chair, so moved. Madam Chair, question?
Yes. Any questions?
Yes. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Once if this goes through, we all say yay, how long will this take before the map actually shows up on the GPS so people who are biking can tune into their GPS and not be lost?
So once this is approved, Jim and I will then take it to FDEP, the Office of Greenways and Trails, to then hopefully get it onto the statewide maps. Now, just because it's mapped, that not all of this is completed. And so we will have to then work with OGT and Jim and I coordinate to create some sort of map that actually shows you where the gaps are and what is completed and rideable. And then, Abby and I have annually kind of promote our trails during National Trails Month. So it's quite possible that we could get a map developed where it could show where the trail is existing, and out by, that month, which is June of next year.
So that would be a virtual map,
So
so we have to open up the map and do the big map.
We haven't really done any kind of physical maps. We see that as we're a planning agency, and promotion of a trail in that manner is really on the maintaining agency. So we'll help you get the trail built, but, and we'll obviously, do promotion, but we've never done any kind of physical map. But this is definitely like the very tip of the iceberg in this trail. We don't have a lot of answers yet. We need to start working towards formalizing it, so then we can get funding to start developing those types of answers.
Thank you, Sarah. I think we have a motion. I'll be having a second.
Yeah, I believe.
Actually, I think you've got the motion and a second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. I'll need a roll call.
Ellender,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Forrester,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Liver,
Yes. Yes.
Meehan,
Yes.
Yes. Minus,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes. Yes.
Jake Williams,
Yes.
Young. Yes. Cullum.
Yes.
Okay, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And next is
Thank you very much. And next is
Executive Director's Evaluation, and Paul Googleman will be reporting on that.
Madam Chair, the Executive Committee, as our traditional procedure, did meet. And the way that it works is that each individual member of the Executive Committee may submit their own individual rating of the Executive Director. Then all of those ratings are tallied together with both numerical ratings and comments. A public hearing is then held so that the community can comment if they choose to. And the Executive Committee then votes on two items. The first item that they vote on is the recommended evaluation, which is everybody's individual evaluations combined. The second thing that they vote on is a recommendation for pay adjustment. With regard to the recommendation regarding the evaluation, we had something that I've never seen happen before. Every single rater on the Executive Committee on every individual criterion rated Ms. Gillette with a perfect 4-point score. So for overall evaluation, the average is 4.0 on a 4-point scale. And that's unusual. Usually somebody on some of the criterions, individual criteria, usually scores somebody with a 3 or something like that. But in this case, every single member of the Executive Committee agreed on every criterion for rating to award a 4. It made the averaging pretty easy, frankly. After that, there was a discussion on what to do about a pay adjustment. And some of the Executive Committee members have traditionally not made any recommendations or discussed it until we get to the actual Executive Committee meeting. Other members of the Executive Committee, and as part of their their overall evaluation will make a recommendation. That's at the end of the report, my memo that's in your agenda package on page 167. And you'll see that we had ratings or recommendations for discussion anywhere from $10,000 one-time bonus or a salary increase of $10,000, 5% increase plus cost of living, 2% increase plus cost of living. Many members had different opinions. All were very favorable to Ms. Gillette. Ms. Gillette interrupted the discussion and stated that she would prefer to have a smaller recommendation going forward to the government board. I'll let her make her announcement now, if you'd like to.
Well, one of the recommendations was a $2,000 bonus. And my thoughts were that that seemed very appropriate. In the budget, we had a 2% cost of living increase for all of staff. And I really wanted to, preserve the additional funding for performance, pay increases for outstanding performance. So that was really important to me. So I am very appreciative and honored to lead this organization. And it means so much that I have your confidence. So the $2,000 bonus I thought was more appropriate with the budget restraints that we have right now. And I'm very appreciative for that recommendation.
Thank you. Anyway, Ms. Gillette's generous offer was, although it was certainly an amount that was less than what some of the executive committee members felt was appropriate, the committee did go ahead and recommend that. So, Madam Chair, we're looking for two motions. The first motion is to approve the overall evaluation, and the second motion for approval would be to approve Ms. Gillette's offer, which the committee recommended for the $2,000 bonus.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Googleman. So, board, please, I need a motion on the first, the executive director's performance evaluation.
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lober would like to speak.
Okay.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, this is a tough one. Obviously, the last time this came up a year ago, I was very supportive of Ms. Gillette getting a substantial increase. We were in a different position then than we are now. What I'm wondering, and this is a question more for staff than really anyone else, rather than doing a bonus, which I discussed, I think, last year, why I'm against any government employee ever getting a bonus, would it be possible, instead of doing a 2% cost of living, to up that a little bit to 2.38%, and then also apply that 2.38% to all of the staff members at TPO, not just Ms. Gillette?
Sure. Commissioner Lober, yes, that is a possibility, from staff's perspective. Yes.
Yeah, and looking at the numbers, I don't think that would put you in a terrible spot when you look at it in comparison to the bonus. I just think giving out bonuses may send the wrong impression. And frankly, not that I think that you're looking to leave. Hopefully we're treating you reasonably well, Mr. Gillette. But I think when you increase someone's salary, it incentivizes them to stay on longer. So for that reason, I don't want to lose you. I'd rather keep you, again, not suggesting that you're looking to bail by any means. But after we address the first question, when it comes to the actual salary adjustment, I would be inclined to go ahead and, if the chair wishes to take this as a motion at that time, I would propose that we increase all TPO staff by 2.38%, including Ms. Gillette, instead of the 2% cost of living.
Well, let's get through the performance evaluation motion, and then we'll go on to the one-time bonus.
Do you already have a second, Madam Chair?
Yes, I heard a motion and a second.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have the motion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Second from Bailey.
Now, I just want to clarify that this is only the performance evaluation. This is what we're voting on. All right, so I need a roll call.
Allender,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Forrester,
Yes, well deserved. Yes, well deserved.
Commissioner Nardi,
Yes. Yes.
Kenny Johnson,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes.
Meehan,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes. 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 Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Smith,
Yes. Yes.
Jake Williams,
Yes.
Ann Young. Yes. And Helen.
Yes.
I am so sorry, and minus.
Yes.
Did I miss anyone? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So Commissioner Lober, you can go ahead and make your recommendation, what you had discussed earlier.
Sure, I'd go ahead and make a motion at this time to adjust the cost of living for all TPO employees to 2.38% instead of the 2%. And we'll do that in lieu of making any other adjustments on Ms. Gillette's pay or compensation.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner Smith.
Well, I have mixed emotions about this. I'm like all of you, I'm a big fan of Georgiana, but we certainly are in uncertain times and revenue is down across the board. And if we give her a performance raise, I'm with Commissioner Lober. I'm not real crazy about performance raises, but that's a one-time deal. If we increase the salary, that's recurring year after year after year. So that's my predicament. I have to tell you that I will vote against this.
Okay, any other discussion?
Bailey?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Frank Forrester.
Okay.
I would support Commissioner Lober's suggestion. I think in the long term, financially, Ms. Gillette might make out even better on that, but it's not going to hit us with a bonus. I kind of share his philosophy about bonuses in general, so I'll support the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah. Madam Chair?
Yes, we have to, okay. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I second the motion. I was curious, Commissioner Lober, can you explain where the specific number he got came from? Obviously, he did some math on that. That didn't come out of thin air. So I'm just curious what that number means. Was it 3.36?
2.3.
Sure, the 2.38%. Madam Chair, if I may?
Yeah, please say your name.
Sure, it's Commissioner Lober on the line here. Yeah, the short
Okay.
answer is the 2.38%. We had a relatively prolonged discussion at our most recent county commission meeting on what sort of cost of living adjustment to give the over 1,000, almost 2,000 county employees, I think it's 1,800 and change in any event, across the board. And there was a lot of math that went into that. And I like having parity across the board whenever that's possible. If there are factors that cause us to need to differentiate between TPO staff and county staff, certainly we can adjust things as need be. But the 2.38% just tied in with what we've done with a tremendous number of county employees. Looking at the numbers as well, it appeared to be something that we could afford to do. So for both of those reasons, I'm a little bit preferential toward 2.38. But truth be told, whether it's 2.38 or some number slightly higher or slightly lower, it wouldn't make much of a difference.
All right. Anyone else? All right. So I have a motion and I have we'll go ahead and vote.
Yeah.
Okay. Allender,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Forrester,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioners Nardi,
No. No.
Kenny Johnson,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Lober,
Yes.
Deanne,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Minus. Yes. Commissioner Smith,
No.
Jake Williams,
Yes.
Young. Yes. Cullum.
Yes.
Is anyone? Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Next is a direction on the SR 28, and we'll start off with Georgiana.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to start out by thanking all of our governing board members for your patience and your attention to this discussion over the past year and a half. It clearly shows that you're not taking this decision lightly, and that we're trying to get all the facts, balancing a transportation need along with an environmental need. So I also want to thank our FDOT partners because, they have allowed us the time to dig into this issue, even putting the design on hold for over 6 months so that the St. Johns River Water Management Water Quality Study could be conducted as it relates to causeway removal. So first, I just want to say thank you. I do want to acknowledge some of the very important letters that we've received over the past few days from the Indian River Lagoon Board of Directors and the National Estuary Program, as well as some of the local scientists and experts in the field, strongly encouraging the TPO to consider design options which increase water flow and consider a more robust assumption for sea level rise and climate change. And those letters were sent out to you yesterday, along with the PowerPoint presentation that will be presented today. So we have two separate issues. One, we have sea level rise, which is related to the bridge elevation. And then two, we have the length of the bridge over the Banana River and the potential for causeway removal, two separate issues. So first, Ms. Lorene Bobo, the Director, FDOT Director of Transportation Development, asked to briefly address the governing board and wants to give everyone an update on the sea level rise discussion. And then after that, Laura Carter, the TPO's Assistant Director, is going to present on the options for lengthening the bridge over the Banana River. And our hope is that the members will feel more comfortable, making a unified decision so we can move forward. So, Ms. Bobo, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Georgiana. I appreciate it. Just thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this afternoon and speaking to the board once again about this very important issue. We recognize that we are a stakeholder and fill one of the roles in making sure that the health and water quality in the lagoon is the best that it can be. We were glad to do our part by putting the design on hold so the right studies could be done to make the best decisions regarding the water quality in this area. We look forward to the continued collaboration as we work on this project and others. And as Georgiana mentioned in her executive director report, our funding will be taking a hit. So now, not only in the near term, but the long term, so now more than ever, we need to make sure we're making the best fiscal decisions on this project as well as all of our projects. As Georgia mentioned, there are two different issues that we're talking about. We're talking about, does it make sense to lengthen the bridge to possibly remove the causeway to improve the water quality, but also sea level rise. We have heard the stakeholders loud and clear. We understand that there's a difference in opinion on how to best evaluate sea level rise. The conversation is not done. We have received those letters, we have read them, and we look forward to continuing to talk and collaborate and make sure that that we are building the right infrastructure, because it needs to last for several generations, right? This is not a short-term bridge. And we might actually be more aligned than we think. Some of the numbers that we received in the letters indicated what the DOT should be looking at. And in fact, our proposed roadway is above that. So I really look forward to collaborating, bringing all the stakeholders together and making sure that we are doing the right thing in this area for our infrastructure and for the water quality. So I appreciate the opportunity to address everybody. Thank you.
And so Laura will be coming up next.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Carter, the Space Coast TPO Assistant Director. This afternoon, I'll be presenting about the State Road 528 design and the two options we have to consider today. As we're all aware, the discussion of State Road 528 has been occurring over the past year regarding design options and bridge length over the Banana River to incorporate potential environmental improvement opportunities related to the causeway removal option. Previous presentations and discussions have focused on the science and the biological attributes of the lagoon and what potential impacts removing the causeway could have on the lagoon, such as improved flushing and better water quality. In July, both the technical and citizens advisory committees both recommended to move forward with the current design. Although the current bridge design would not offer the opportunity for any causeway removal, there are mitigation projects that the Florida Department of Transportation environmental look-around process identified that would directly improve water quality and could begin within the next year or two. In July, the TPO board tabled this item so additional information could be gathered and shared regarding impacts to other projects, such as the State Road 401 PD&E phase that is to begin later this year, and if that would be impacted with the delay in the 528 design process. Today, the focus is going to be on selecting a design option, as I said, to recommend to DOT regarding which length of bridge over the Banana River to move forward with to complete the design phase. Historically, prior to the Space Center and the port being created, one can see the creation of the causeway from these aerial photos from 1951 and then 21 years later in 1972. The port officially opened in 1953, and the causeways existed before State Road 528 was built. It has been determined at this point in time that the DOT has an easement agreement with the port and that the causeway is actually owned by the port. Over the years, we have been talking about 528, and I'd like to remind you the entire process that we've had to go through to get to the point where we're at today. When the 2020 long-range transportation plan was adopted in 2000, and we just adopted the 2045 today, this was the first record that I was able to find when the 528 was identified as needing to be widened in the future. At that time then, following, a PD&E phase was conducted and completed in 2006. That was 14 years ago. This is the phase when the environmental analysis and permits were originally looked at. Fast forwarding to 2016, the design phase started, which is the phase that we are in today. With the increased awareness of the Indian River Lagoon's poor health and modeling efforts about potential improvements to the lagoon if causeways were removed, DOT was asked to pause the design, which thankfully they have done. And we have been evaluating if there is a significant benefit to possibly removing the causeways over the Banana River. Different models have shown different results. The most recent study conducted by Dr. Disrillo at FIT is the one that has shown the most promise of improving water flow in the Banana River Lagoon by removing both the 528 and 520 causeways. It is not the intention to discuss the validity and any of the details of these model results, but to look at the 528 project overall, weigh the pros and cons from both a transportation need and balancing environmental impacts, and select which design option is best. So let's remember how this project fits into the bigger picture, both from a transportation need and within the full Indian River Lagoon system. The need to widen 528 is evident from looking at the current and projected annual average daily traffic volumes provided by the Florida Department of Transportation. It is anticipated that the cruise industry will return after COVID, and combined with the port's growth and the growing space industry, 528 is going to be required to be widened to serve both the needs of the community and our visitors that are vital to our tourism industry. If Brevard is to represent the launching pad into space and the future, it needs a transportation system that reflects and supports that mission. The widening of 528 has been broken up into a couple segments in order to program the remaining phases that are going to be cost feasible. Design is underway covering Industry Road to 401, segments A and D shown on the map. Right-of-way for both of these segments are scheduled to begin in fiscal year 24, pending the availability of funding. Construction for segment B only is planned in the 2045 LRTP for the fiscal year 31 through 35 timeframe. Segment A is currently unfunded for construction. State Road 401, letter C on the map, is a critical economic connector at the port and is scheduled to begin a PD&E this fiscal year. State Road 401 was brought up in July as part of the consideration on how to move forward with 528 due to both its geometric tie-in with 528 and any delay that might happen if 528 design is delayed. So the importance of State Road 401 is critical. It has vascular bridges over the Canaveral Barge Canal. Current weight limits and insufficient capacity could inhibit future economic growth. It is vital to the operations of the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, Canaveral Spaceport, Space Florida, provides cruise terminal access, and access to the port cargo and fuel storage facilities. It was built back in 1963 and today is considered functionally obsolete. So obviously with its direct tie to 528, we have had conversations with the DOT and it does not appear at this time that the PD&E phase for State Road 401 will be delayed if either option for 528 is chosen today. So now I want to turn your attention to why the design phase has been put on pause at the moment. Looking at the opportunity to improve the lagoon with a different design and remove the causeway has been a worthwhile endeavor. Let's look at the bigger picture, however, remembering that we need to put in perspective the role that 528 Bridge plays over the Banana River within the full lagoon system. The Indian River Lagoon is comprised of 3 systems: the Mosquito Lagoon to the north, the Banana River Lagoon, which is the lagoon that we're interested in today, and the Indian River to the west. It is a total of 156 miles long. Focusing in on just the Banana River Lagoon, we need to recognize its uniqueness. It is unfair to compare it to other estuaries, especially those that function with tidal flows. The Banana River Lagoon is almost an enclosed system with little water flushing, and always has been. This map is displaying the locations that the recent Save Our Lagoon program has identified within the lagoon system for projects that can help bring the lagoon back to a more healthy estuary. And the program has really just begun. There are almost 200 projects that are planned to be worked on and implemented in the coming years. I'd like to note that this thermometer was taken a few weeks ago, so please visit the Save Our Lagoon website for the latest updates, as I believe the thermometer is actually going in a positive direction and the more projects have been completed. All of these projects combined help restore the lagoon. The causeway removal is not actually listed as a project in the plan, but the question does need to be asked, how much improvement will there be if the causeway is removed? Unfortunately, there's no exact answer. The point is, causeway removal is just one piece of the larger plan. We have heard about some of the scientific models that have been run to help answer the benefits of removing the causeway. Some models have looked at flushing, the movement of the water, and others have considered water quality, how much pollutants can be removed. There are differing views on the percent improvement to water flow and how the analysis was performed. Remember, models are a tool used to help guide decisions, just like the transportation demand model used to help identify potential future road improvement projects. This presentation is not meant to question the numbers or how to interpret these results. We should, however, let the idea that there could be an opportunity for water flow improvement be a part of the overall consideration and factor today. So today there are 2 options for consideration. The TPO is tasked with planning transportation needs and should consider all aspects and impacts projects may have on the community. The DOT has taken the time to pause the design to allow for these evaluations to be completed with what could happen with causeway removal. The pros and cons must now be weighed, and a direction on which option to design needs to be made. Option A is to move forward with the current design, no causeway removal. This is the option, as I mentioned earlier, that both the TAC and CAC recommended in July. Please note, however, that option B that's being presented today was not available in July. The committee's recommendation was based on keeping the current design or having to start over and go back to the PD&E. The second option is to amend the current design and expand the bridge length that would allow for causeway removal at some point. The causeway removal would not be part of the 528 widening and new bridge project, but could be something that could be done as a separate project. Option A, the current design, is actually extending the bridge from its current length due to poor soil conditions. But this design was not going to allow for causeway removal. The design is currently utilizing portions of the causeway for runoff treatment and ponds, minimizing the right-of-way impacts and costs. So here you see option A. The strengths and weaknesses listed are not meant to include every possible attribute, but are here to provide guidance. The benefits of option A are that the design is already 60% complete. There are no modifications needed, and the design phase can be completed in the quickest amount of time. This option also doesn't jeopardize any of the work completed to date, nor does it have any potential to cause any prior phases to be reevaluated. Right-of-way needs are known, and as long as funding is available, will begin in fiscal year 24. The PD&E for State Road 401 will also start as planned this fiscal year. DOT will continue to coordinate and support the mitigation projects identified as part of the environmental look around. Multi-use trail will be included, along with some recreational access to the causeway will remain. Option A, however, will not allow for any future removal of the causeway, which also will not provide any increase to the existing water flow. Option B will extend the bridge 4,500 feet. This does allow for the opportunity for causeway removal in the future. Multiple agencies will need to coordinate the efforts for the causeway removal. If there's no causeway, then the ponds will need to be relocated. Will need to be moved with very limited vacant land available. The result could be potential estuary impacts, impacts to the port's property, or the taking of homes. Regardless, a longer span bridge will likely result in an increase to the right-of-way phase. Some of the strengths of option A are also applicable to option B. These are in blue on the slide. Recreational use of the main causeway would obviously be removed, except for potentially the far east side on the port side that may have still retained some access. The main positive of option B is that this option does allow for the opportunity to remove the causeway at some point in the future. Considerations of the impacts of option B include an additional estimate of $2.5 million would be required to modify the current design to expand the bridge to 4,500 feet. This could potentially cause DOT to delay the $1.9 million for the mitigation projects of septic to sewer, as would be done with option A, as the permits needed to conduct this project may expire before implementation could be done. The right-of-way phase may require additional funding, as use of the causeway would no longer be feasible for ponding, use of ponds, and the construction phase would also increase with an estimated additional $47 million needed. Note that the cost of the causeway is a separate process, and that cost is unknown. Exact environmental impacts are also unknown, and the causeway removal will require additional analysis and coordination among various agencies and stakeholders. So summarizing, taking into consideration the transportation needs, the level of potential lagoon improvement, best use of our taxpayer funds, what option serves the community best? Ultimately, are the delays and cost increases, along with an unknown level of lagoon improvement, worth changing the design and lengthening the bridge over the Banana River? Will there be positive results for future generations that outweigh potential negative impacts from delaying the project and a possibility that it may become cost prohibitive? There is no question that there is a significant value to getting the lagoon's health restored. Is this one project going to make or break that from happening? Ultimately, is some opportunity for improvement better than none? And that today's decision could impact decisions made on all future roadway projects that cross our lagoon system for generations to come. And with that, the requested action is for a decision to be made for guidance on either option A, current design, or option B, to go ahead and extend the design of the bridge length so that causeway removal can be pursued in the future.
Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you, Laura. So any questions?
Madam Chair.
I have our.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Is it Commissioner Lober?
Madam Chair, if you'd indulge me just a little bit, I've got several questions for FDOT, and then I may have some for Dr. DeFries and Virginia Barker, who I think are here. Is that all right, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I'll try not to repeat too much of what I discussed at the last TPO meeting regarding this issue, but I do want to mention again that State Road 528 is right in the core, the heart of my district. And if I turn my webcam around, you'll actually be looking out the window right at State Road 528, or at least the central portion of it. So the first few questions I have are for FDOT. The first question for FDOT, it appears that there may be some reliance, at least in part, directly or indirectly on chlorophyll levels in addition to nitrogen, and perhaps to a lesser extent also phosphorus, in determining nutrient loading and impact with respect to that. Now, sorrel, when we look at the county level and the half-cent sales tax, generally looks almost exclusively at nitrogen loading, not so much at chlorophyll, really. And I'm curious as to why it appears that FDOT relies on these multiple nutrient loading indicators. The reason I'm asking is because I think having a consistent singular variable really helps in making apples to apples comparisons so that we can do that cleanly and easily.
Madam Chair, may I speak?
Yes.
So Commissioner Lober, unfortunately, I am not a scientist. I have staff that is, and they can speak to the specifics of that. What I do know is that FDOT was already looking at opportunities to improve the water quality in this area, even before the discussion on removal of the causeway came along. And that process is how we got to working with Brevard County and offering to help fund some of the septic to sewer projects, which does improve the water quality in that area. We were grateful that the Water Management District was able to complete their study earlier this year, which indicated that the causeway removal would have no perceptible difference to the water quality. And so that's what we've been using to kind of understand which project may be best to move forward with. We look forward to continuing those conversations with Brevard County and the Water Management District and seeing what else we can do to help improve the water quality. I apologize that I can't speak directly to chloroform and chlorophyll and things like that, so apologize.
I appreciate that, and my concern is a lot of these things, I think, would be, I would certainly be more comfortable having the answers before we move forward. When we're saying, for instance, that one particular proposed course of action would have no visible impact or no tangible impact, I'm just wondering really what that means in some quantifiable chart or some quantifiable metric. I'll skip that for the time being, though. So let me ask, how does the septic to sewer nutrient reduction that's been proposed by FDOT as a mitigation strategy compare to the 9 to, I believe it was roughly 17% improved water flow that was predicted by Professor Zerillo's model, which incidentally I think also tied in pretty closely with the St. Johns River Water Management District data?
So my understanding is that that Dr. Zerillo's study only looked at flushing. It did not equate to water quality, which is why the Water Management District was asked to conduct their study to understand how does the flushing affect water quality. And this Water Management District came back with there was no perceptible difference between with that flushing. So
and let me,
it doesn't necessarily, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, with respect to no perceptible difference, and I just want to make sure I'm on the same page that you are. Obviously, I think we're all probably in agreement, or at least close to being in agreement, that flushing by whatever we do with respect to State Road 528 is going to be contingent, at least in large part, on what eventually down the road in many years happens with State Road 520. So is it the contention of FDOT that there's not going to be a perceptible difference solely if we do something with 528, or is it that there's a contention that even if we do 528 in a particular fashion and we address 520 as well, that there's still not going to be a perceptible difference? I just don't want to lose that opportunity.
Understand. So my understanding is that the Water Management District study did look at both the 528 and 520. I'm not sure if they looked at both lagoons. I know that FDOT completed a causeway study, I may be calling it the wrong thing, a while back, and we have indicated that when we touch 520, Don't know when that will be, because right now it's not on our needs list, that we would be removing the causeway at 520. So that's regardless of any conversation.
Okay, I appreciate that. I've just got a few more questions, and I'm sorry to kind of barrage you with them, but this is one of these projects that's probably more important than anything else that'll come up, at least in my time on the TPO, as far as my district's concerned. So I've got a tremendous interest in this one. But, before we support the TPO, that is any particular proposal, whether it's A, B, or something that hasn't been discussed yet, I really like to look at the options that are available and consider the opportunity cost that comes along with those options. Since the last TPO meeting in which this was discussed as an item, has FDOT, to your knowledge, done any sort of either cost-benefit comparison or put together even preliminary figures for a low-rise elevated bridge span with causeway removal and use of the dredge material as roadbed fill?
We have not. FDOT does not own that property. We are there by easement. And we have not done a study like that. So I'm not sure how much that would cost to remove that. Keeping in mind that we were planning on putting some of our ponds in the current causeway area. So if we were to remove any causeway, we will need to purchase additional right-of-way that we currently are not planning on doing. So that will increase our right-of-way costs in future years.
I appreciate that. And I can't speak for the port, obviously, despite its being in my district, but I know they've had some financial struggles in recent times here, especially with the cruise industry having taken a bit of a dive, forgive the pun. But I know they own a slew of property in that area, so they might be reasonable given that a project in the area stands to benefit them disproportionately almost. And I appreciate your acknowledging just a few minutes ago when you were presenting that the conversation regarding sea level rise isn't yet complete. I agree with you 100% on that contention. Without an agreement on this critical variable, though, I'm really worried that we not rush into a decision that's essentially going to be irreversible for any of our lifetimes. My understanding is that FDOT's modeling has and continues to show a linear increase in estimated water level rise. And I don't want to get into a debate with anyone, for that matter, on the cause of sea level rise, but I can't deny the reality that a model that's predicated on a linear sea level increase doesn't really appear to reflect what's happening at ground level. Namely, that the increase is speeding up beyond what would be represented in a linear map. And I'm just worried that as we track that over 100 years in the future, or up to 100 years in the future, that the modeling is something we can truly rely on. So I guess my questions for you are why FDOT is still relying on a linear model, given that a linear model just doesn't seem to fit with what's actually happening on sea level rise, at least in the local area.
Okay. So the good thing is that FDOT as a state from our central office looks at sea level rise annually. We are, every year we look at, are we doing the right thing? Do we need to make adjustments? And we review that plan with Federal Highway every year. So there is still a lot of opportunity to, it's not like we look at it every 10 years or something like that. I know that there's some recent, I think there are federal studies that have been done related to sea level rise, and I believe those are being taken into consideration. So like I said earlier, the conversation is not done. I really would like to get together with all the stakeholders and my, my scientists and my biologists to make sure that we are making the best decisions that we can. I appreciate that you'd like to understand some more information, but before making decisions. But the sea level rise is a different conversation than causeway removal, and we can continue to have that collaboration as long as we need to. But maybe the good thing is that we don't have the funding to build this bridge tomorrow, so we do have some time to kind of work through those things and make sure that we are on the same page.
And I appreciate that. I also appreciate your having met with me. I guess it was a couple of weeks ago at this point. And my concern, just to real briefly address it, with respect to what information and what sources of information FDOT is relying on, is that even when we met, I guess a couple of weeks ago, as I mentioned, the graphs that I was looking at from FDOT all had linear increase data that was being used and essentially extrapolated and used as a basis for looking out decades and decades in the future. So it is a concern for me. I don't know that it necessarily ought to be a different discussion than what option we pursue, because I think a lot of the data determines the cost effectiveness and the relative merits or detriments that are associated with any of the particular options that may come up. But be that as it may, has FDOT done any sort of work to evaluate, and I promise I'll stop talking about sea level rise after this, but have they done any sort of work to evaluate whether the linear rise is really appropriate to graph out that far in the future when we're talking, basically a century out?
So those conversations are happening out of our central office, who represents the whole state. I have shared all of the letters that we've received over the last 2 days, and actually even before that, I had shared with them that there was a lot of concern related to the current FDOT model. So I can assure you that they are aware, and I know that I'm going to be more involved now and want to understand what they're looking at. But I really do believe that we are listening to you. I don't know what that means from a change standpoint, but we have heard you, and we recognize that this is not just an issue in this area, but the whole state. I mean, Florida's got a lot of coastline that we need to understand how that's going to affect us. So I can't speak to why the linear model versus a different model, but I can tell you that we have heard you.
And let me ask you as well, and it's just as a real brief follow-up on that, have they discussed, to your knowledge, or put out any sort of information to your office or elsewhere that you're aware of, any sort of consideration with respect to storm surge? Because even if the linear model were something that we could reasonably rely on, and I would argue it may not be, the concern with our location being on the Atlantic seaboard here, in an area that quite frankly has just lucked out over a period of years and not having a major storm event, have they looked at that at all, or are they looking at that?
Yes, storm surge is something that we take into consideration, and we have done so on this project as well. And that is something that we can include in our conversations as we continue on sea level rise. But it is, I can't speak to specifics, but I know that is something that is considered.
I appreciate that. And Madam Chair, I promise I'll be very brief if you'd continue just to indulge me a little bit here. I've got one question for Virginia Barker if she's on the line, and maybe a couple of follow-ups for Dr. DeFries, and then I'll sit back and be quiet for the rest of the meeting.
Okay.
All right, I appreciate it. Ms. Barker, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Virginia, just one question for you. Is the information that FDOT's relying on, as was suggested by the most recent slides that you've seen from them, is it accurate in reflecting how many septic to sewer projects have been contracted for, or how many septic to sewer contracts have actually been completed on our end? I'm just trying to gauge whether the cost benefit analysis and the purported advantages of their proposal really are relying on accurate data.
So I think you may be talking about the little thermometer that was in Laura's PowerPoint, and unfortunately our website, we were not able to update that for a while, so that was out of date. We have completed 30 projects, and we have 83 in contract now, so that 12 should be 30, the 30 should be 83. But to your question about, comparing projects in the plan, septic to sewer, to the causeway, the annual loading estimates of nitrogen to the Banana River are, according to the state and the adopted TMDLs, the federal and state adopted TMDLs, are 477,000 pounds per year. So rounding to just even numbers that are easier to remember, 500,000 pounds per year. The septic to sewer project that DOT has proposed to fund, which, that would be great, is about a $2 million project that would remove about 1,800 pounds of nitrogen. Removal of the causeway, if you use Dr. Gary Zerillo's numbers that were more or less confirmed by the St. John's model, the 9 to 17% increase in flushing, if we take towards the low end of that range, 10% of 500,000 pounds per year is 50,000 pounds per year. So I think that's the best answer I can give you. The removal of the causeway has the potential benefit of on the order of 50,000 pounds a year. The septic to sewer project that's being proposed is less than 2,000 pounds a year.
I appreciate it, Virginia. Thank you. That does actually answer what I was looking for. Dr. DeFries, do we have you on the line, sir?
Yes, Commissioner. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. And I appreciate your willingness to help and to be present at all of these TPO meetings that touch on topics of water quality. I've just got a few questions for you, Dr. DeFries. First, what, if any, position has the IRL-NET taken with respect to FDOT's proposed changes for 528, namely the design?
The letter that you received from the IRL Council Board of Directors basically requested that the partners look at any and all opportunities to increase flow. And so while Council Board of Directors did not want to tell anybody how to get there, there was unanimous agreement that improving flow in the Indian River Lagoon is an important consideration that should not be ignored in this particular opportunity. And Commissioner, if I might attempt to answer your question number one that you proposed to Ms. Bobo, it may kind of help everybody kind of understand. I know you're probably looking out the window, and many of you, I know the mayors are probably already getting phone calls. But as we speak, over the last 2 weeks, we have transitioned from a relatively good water quality to now where we have multiple species blooming. We are on the edge of a potential fish kill, looking at our dissolved oxygens. And your question was about nitrogen and phosphorus. And I want to just, without being scientific, tell you how this works, because it's complicated. So right now we have 4 different species at a minimum in a harmful algal bloom. A couple of those species we know a lot about, and a bunch of them we hardly know anything about, but they all react to the system somewhat differently, like each of us would in changing conditions. And so if you talk to the scientists, and one disclosure I want to make, which I have not done on the record with you all, is that I am not an expert in harmful algal blooms, but for the last 5 years, I have been with the experts on a national level. And I also represent Governor DeSantis as an appointed member to the Harmful Algal Bloom Task Force. And so this is how it works. It's not just nitrogen, but it's nitrogen and phosphorus. And it could be different in the Mosquito Lagoon than it is in, central Indian River Lagoon by Melbourne, depending on the species. So each of those critters is reacting to both, not just the nutrients, but the nutrients that are available to them, which is why at times we'll see a dominant bloom like back in 2016 where it was brown tide everywhere. And what's happening now is similar to what we saw in 15 and 16. So brown tide is just coming into play. But we have had a group called eukaryotes. We've had a group, a dinoflagellate, the one everybody likes for bioluminescence, that's been blooming on and off all summer. So it's true, nutrients drive and fuel blooms just like fertilizer. But the three other drivers, the key kind of things that push that bloom is temperature, salinity, and every scientist I talk to talks about residence time, how much the water is flowing and how much it's flushing through the system. So when we have a segment like Banana River, Southern Mosquito Lagoon, and right now from really Melbourne Causeway all the way past Pineda, the long residence time makes the system more vulnerable to those nutrient inputs. So I really appreciate what Virginia just said about the quantification, but what blooms and how they bloom is highly variable to how they react to those changing conditions. And hopefully that helps answer that question about, is it just nitrogen? Phosphorus comes into play, and there's independent studies that suggest that it may be more important kind of up in Mosquito Lagoon than it is in Brevard County. So hopefully that helps a little bit, that it's a complicated interaction between flow, chemistry, and biology.
I appreciate it, Dr. DeFries. I've just got a few very short questions for you, and I certainly appreciate the level of detail. I don't know respectfully that the next few questions require it. If you think it's necessary, certainly give us as much detail as you want. I don't want to cut you off where you feel that you need additional context to be presented. But what I gathered from what you just meant, okay, I appreciate it, sir. I want to make sure that I'm understanding from what you just mentioned that your point is essentially that it's important that any bridge decision consider flow and not downplay its importance.
That's correct.
Okay, and then on a different topic, do you have any thoughts with respect to sea level rise predictions, the impact of climate change, or the importance? Well, we've already addressed the water flow issue with causeway removal. So would you have any thoughts with respect to sea level rise predictions or the impact of climate change insofar as how they ought to factor into the decisions that are made on whether to pursue proposal A, B, or even to punt this to look for a third alternative?
In my opinion, that question has no relevance to these different options, that every one of these options, and Ms. Bobo said that they were looking at it. Every scientist I talked to, both locally and nationally, have all agreed that this linear global estimate is insufficient to understand vulnerability. And so whether it is design as is or some option, I think it is absolutely essential that DOT and the partners, compare and contrast whatever that target elevation is with the nonlinear science that's out there to make sure that elevation is safe enough to address vulnerability. The last thing we'd want is to build this causeway and have it failing, not in 70 years, but in 25 or 30 years because we got that estimate wrong.
I appreciate it, Doctor. Let me ask you, and on that same vein, we heard from Ms. Bobo a few minutes ago that the conversation regarding sea level rise isn't yet done or isn't yet complete. And she did mention that FDOT certainly has scientists. I think she mentioned she's not a scientist, nor am I, so I certainly can't fault her for that. But as a scientist, Dr. DeFries, do you believe that we can determine today which bridge design option is best without being able to rely on an accurate sea level rise estimate?
They are all estimates. I think the key is to make sure that we are taking a conservative approach, knowing that, nobody that I talk to thinks it's going to be less than the linear approach. Everybody I talk to, and that's now probably 6 or 7 scientists just in the last couple of weeks, and you have some letters from a few of them who called me concerned, all agree that sea level rise is going to be more than the linear, and that because we have that high stand that I talked about the last meeting, we have to look at the regional high stand and then factor in storm surge, because the models are there. It's, we should look at all those tools before we make a decision. And I think those tools now are in front of everybody, where DOT and the partners can, I agree with DOT, get them in a room, and figure out what the appropriate elevation is based on those lines of evidence.
I appreciate that. So I think that at least sums up pretty well why it's important that the issue regarding sea level rise be determined prior to moving forward with selecting a design. But let me ask you, Doctor. Now, we've seen since the last TPO meeting in which you and I think both voiced varying levels of opposition to the initial FDOT proposal, that now there is a substantially amended proposal that surfaced. If the TPO were to request it, would the NEP evaluate the options that were presented today and give commentary with respect to their thoughts on either water quality concerns or flow or anything that would fall within the purview of the NEP?
I believe we've actually already done that. When we realized almost 2.5 years ago, so my first meeting was back at the environmental look around in 2017. And my recollection, because I know I was nervous when I left that meeting, I made a statement publicly at that meeting that should the partners and DOT not take a serious look at flow and not take a serious look at their estimates of sea level rise vulnerability, that I would be sometime in the future reluctantly at a microphone saying that we were negligent in looking at our vulnerabilities and risks. And so I think there's enough information on the table over the last 2 years for you to make a kind of a reasonable decision about the value of these two decision points. But then what has to happen is the transportation experts need to evaluate that, option B to me is kind of a generality because there is no PD&E with it yet. But I do think option B, does provide at least the opportunity not to lose this flow, this flow value. And I use value very carefully here. You asked a question about kind of value, cost benefit. And I just want to remind the governing board, when DOT or any of the partners and even your own staff talk about increased cost, 20 million, 100 million, I look at that and I say, those cost estimates really don't mean much unless you look at value. And the data that we have in 2 independent studies is that the value that the lagoon contributes to our economy is between $6 and $7.6 billion a year. And that is at risk if we have poor water quality across the board. Those same studies, one is Brevard County, estimated that every dollar for restoration spent delivers between $20 and $33 of potential value. So we need to be careful not to always just talk about cost, but look at those contributed benefits over this long time frame of 50 to 70 years. And I'd argue, $100 million to get this right over the long haul is going to provide significant economic benefits if you get that PD&E right. And there were options that folks after your last meeting called me about, if you couldn't pull the causeway completely, and open it at the full amount, are there other options? There was a member of the audience from Atkins who said, what about box culverts like we do at, 192 Causeway in Melbourne? We have relief bridges, that prevent algae from stacking up in the corners. So I strongly urge, as did the IRL council, board of directors, we're happy to sit in those meetings, but we are not transportation and engineer design experts. We look to both Brevard County and, FDOT for that, but we're happy to sit in those meetings and provide the best available guidance. And I've got, 33 research organizations on the science side, so we're happy to continue to contribute, but I don't think we've got the expertise to tell you how to build a bridge or how to build a elevated causeway and then do surgical dredging after you're done.
I appreciate that, sir. So I think at this point, I'll go ahead and make a motion, Madam Chair, that
Before you do,
Yes,
we
ma'am.
do have some speakers that would like to speak.
Yes, ma'am, certainly.
All right. So, Mr. Forrester, you would like to speak?
I'm here, thank you. I'm looking at this from a couple of different viewpoints. One thing I'd like to mention is that several months ago, we were presented with some data that showed that unless we also did something with the causeway on 520, we were not going to get a maximum benefit out of eliminating part of the causeway on 528. So I just point out that we really have a bigger problem than we're just looking at here today. It's really a combination of working on both causeways to get the kind of flow that we need to provide maximum benefit. Hopefully some of you guys remember seeing that data that we had a few months ago. The other thing is on the issue of sea level rise. I tend to agree with Commissioner Lober. I think, if we miss this, then we will have wasted millions and millions and millions of dollars. If we spend a little bit more to accommodate a potential higher sea level, then the worst we're going to get accused of 20 years from now is spending too much money on the bridge. And I would rather be accused of spending too much money on the bridge than leaving the people on the island trapped by high sea level. I really think that in the long term, and none of this stuff is going to get cheaper as time goes by. But it really, I think, one of these situations where we may need to spend a little bit more money now, take our time, look at some of these other options now, rather than jumping in just because it's something we've got available to us to start right now. So that's it for me for now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forrester. Laura, I think we had some people that are asking questions from the internet. Is there anyone coming through?
Yes, the first one would be Laura Lee Thompson. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thompson, we've unmuted you.
Okay.
Okay. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Laura Lee Thompson. I'm a co-owner of Dixie Crossroads Seafood Restaurant in Titusville. 4 generations of my family have made a living from the Indian River Lagoon through commercial fishing. And it is no longer possible to make a living through commercial fishing in the lagoon. I can remember as a child back in the 1960s, standing with my grandfather on his fishing pier, and we were looking down the river through the pilings of the Titusville Bridge, and you could see all the barges and all the cranes and the dredges that were working on the Nassau Causeway. And I'll never forget my grandfather telling me back then, he said, those causeways that they're building because of all the growth and development that's coming to the county, they're going to kill the lagoon. The causeways will be the death of the lagoon. And, being a little kid, you don't really worry about stuff like that. I could catch plenty of fish. I made a good living commercial fishing for many years. But my grandfather was right, because the causeways, they have stopped the flow. They've stopped the movement of water. It's a wind-driven system. It's not a tidal system. And so when the wind blows out of the north, the water moves south in the lagoon. When it blows out of the south, it moves north, and it moves around, and it keeps things clean. It keeps the shorelines clean. We have an opportunity now to correct some of the damage that we've done, and we have a responsibility to fix the lagoon. You know, I've had to watch. We used to have fishing TV shows filmed here all the time. Titusville used to have 6 big redfish tournaments a year. All that's gone away. Our fishing guides have moved to Louisiana and Texas because they can't make a living here anymore. And our bait shop owners are struggling. And so, you know, we talk about what is the best thing for the community. Well, the best thing for the community is to fix the Indian River Lagoon, and everything that we can do to try to correct what we've done has to be done. Strictly for Brevard County alone, our tourism is $2 billion a year, and that's not counting the real estate or any of the other stuff. That's just like recreation on the lagoon and on our beaches. And that's what people come here for. And so it's our responsibility to ensure that we keep the tourism going. I mean, we're building 10 new hotels this year. People aren't going to come here if they can't go kayaking and see wildlife and enjoy the clean waters of the lagoon and catch fish again. So that is my comment, you know, is that it's the best thing for our community. I agree that, you know, if we spend a little bit more and get it right, that's what we should do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Laura, next, who's scheduled to speak?
Next, we have Mr. Randall Parkinson.
Okay.
Unmute yourself.
Okay.
I'm off of mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Thank you all so very much for having this very important discussion. I am one of the scientists that submitted a letter to you all specific to sea level rise. And I just want to reiterate that I have been working in this area. I'm a resident of Brevard County for over 35 years. So I've watched the lagoon, and not as long as Laura Lee, mind you, but long enough to see changes. The new causeway presents an enormous opportunity for Brevard County to demonstrate its commitment to a forward-thinking, visionary, complete resilience. It could be a purpose and a topic of important discussion about what we're doing here to ensure the quality of life and for future generations. No one uses a linear. The past is not cannot predict the future anymore. How the water levels rose over the last 20, 30, or 40 years has nothing to do with how water levels are rising now and will in the future. So FDOT is really behind the curve, and they're going to have to make an adjustment, because I noticed in their presentations they on and time again say we have complied with the terms of our design memorandums. The problem is those are out of date, and I would encourage you all to seriously consider that for all of the reasons that have been mentioned previously. The person from FDOT mentioned that their elevations were higher than the 1 foot. But we have no idea why they made it higher or how they made it higher. They just made it higher. And whether or not that elevation meets their design criteria for a sea level rise of greater than 1 foot, we don't know. So I think we just don't know, and there's not enough information to seriously think that they might adjust it later was what's being implied. I mean, we have to vote on what we see before us and negotiate a pathway forward that's more realistic and a better investment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Laura, is there anyone else?
I do not have anybody else with their hand raised.
All right,
Madam
thank
Chair.
you. Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner Smith.
I would like to weigh in on this discussion a little bit as well.
Very good.
I am in a unique situation because I live on the Indian River Lagoon and I'm staring at it right now. And what I'm looking at is a lot of green, murky water. And I can tell you up until about 10 days ago, we had a stretch of maybe 6 months of unparalleled clear water that I haven't seen in probably 10 or 15 years. And it just kind of turned overnight. And in the last 10 days, I've been on this river from Titusville all the way down to Sebastian. And I've seen this entire lagoon in that area. And it's all murky green, except where it looks like brown tide is growing. And I saw multiple areas of what looked like brown tide as I approached the Sebastian Inlet last week. So I think everybody's aware we have to do this. And we really, really only have one shot at with the bite of the apple on this. Because if we don't do this bridge right, and it's designed for 75 to 100 years, we're not going to get a chance to fix it afterwards. So we need to get it right from the beginning. And I'm kind of in a unique position also because I sit on virtually every board that is involved with this. I sit on the Indian River Lagoon Council. Of course, I'm on the Board of County Commissioners. And of course, I'm on TPO as well. And I'm also on the board for Central Florida Expressway Authority. And why that board is important is because we, the Central Florida Expressway Authority, we're currently in talks with the governor to take over 528 from 520 to the port. So from my perspective, and I got this phrase from Dr. DeFries, we really only have one bite at the apple here. And we really need to consider all factors that are going to improve the lagoon. And if we can improve the flow 9 to 17%, which Commissioner Lober has mentioned, that's an ongoing improvement that will continue year after year after year, as opposed to a few septic tanks that would be marginally beneficial. So I just hope I can impress upon my fellow TPO members that we really, really need to look at the science as much as we can, and we need to do whatever we can to improve the lagoon. And I would certainly consider improving flow would be a big plus.
All right. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Anyone else would like to speak?
You're gonna have to say something.
Lorraine Koss? Mayor Mahan, Lorraine Koss?
Okay, very good. Lorraine Koss? Okay, very good. Lorraine Koss?
Just to say, and I'll try to make it short because I certainly affirm everything that's been said so far. Thanks to Commissioner Lober for bringing it forward. And I just want to say that as somebody who spent 30 years in water issues, my graduate degree is in environmental management, specifically studying climate change, the risks, the impacts. I look at this, and of course, I also, of course, sit on the Save Our Indian River Lagoon Citizens Oversight Committee. I look at the water quality issue, but the thing that really hits me is the surge. And I did see that listed in FDOT's analysis for weaknesses. The surge, of course, is not going to be, it could happen in 2 years, it could happen in 10 years, but even if sea level rise is below where the causeways are, that surge will eventually get us. You're talking about 1 foot for every inch of sea level rise. And those causeways are at risk. So I agree with everything that's been said so far. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lorraine. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Jerry Allender.
Okay, Commissioner Allender. Okay, Commissioner Allender.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Ms. Bodo if the delay in, if option B is selected, would that any way impact the 401 overpass at the port?
So if we go the option where FDOT designs a longer bridge, and the causeway is a separate project collaborated by others, so it doesn't restart our PD&E, then the 401 could continue on the path it is right now, which is going out this year.
If sometime in the future the causeways are removed, is that a cost that would be borne by FDOT?
I think that's something that we need to discuss with all the stakeholders, as the DOT did not place the causeways there, nor do we own it.
So there's a possibility that the Port Authority would have to remove the causeway.
I don't know that that's been determined.
No, I'm not even determined.
So yes, that would be possible.
It is an issue.
Madam Chair?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
The project would be.
making a request and I need a name.
Oh, Jerry Allen, you're still talking, Kat.
Okay, all right.
Do you mind starting the question over again, so I get it right? Was it a delay
How
to,
much of a delay would there be in the project if option B is the one that is selected?
so I will say that I do not have the funding for the design, the additional funding that's needed. So I don't know when we would be able to restart the design of the bridge. So
So
I
the whole
can't,
project then can be set aside.
right, because I don't have the extra $2.5 million this fiscal year, and I'm not sure when I'm gonna have it, so we would have to see when we have the money.
So the risk then is if option B is selected, that there may not be any activity on line 28.
That is possible, yes.
Not a good idea.
What about the 1.9 million that you're spending on the septic to sewer?
So that is a different pot of money. That's our mitigation money. The money for design comes out of a different pot. And like I had mentioned earlier, that mitigation is for ponds that we removed from the project because we get better water quality results from a project like that versus our ponds. So we were already working on that aspect. It's not a, hey, if we leave the causeways, we'll do this.
All right, so Commissioner Hollander, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Madam Chair, it's Andrea Young.
Okay, very good.
May I speak?
Okay, very good.
All right, thank you. I would like to say, when this was brought to us 6 months ago, was brought to us before, and we were asked to wait 6 months so we could do yet one more study because there were unknowns. We needed to know what would happen if we decided to remove the bridge, what would happen to the little things that live in there. And we did that. We waited 6 months. We were supposed to have that information. Now, there's nothing in my packet that tells me that. We have the letters that we received from all of the experts, which I have read. We only received them yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to cross-reference everything here, but I have read through them and they are wonderful. These are the experts. These are the people that know. We don't know up here. We're not scientists like these people are, but at the end of the day, we as a body, as a TPO body, when we do decide option A, option B, it's going to be our names that go on what we decide to do. We're not only responsible to our residents of our cities and our villages and our counties and all of the other residents or people that are up and down the lagoon, but we're responsible to all the tourists that come here every year. They spend their money to come here to go to our beautiful lagoon and the fishing tournaments and all the things that we have. We're responsible to them too. We serve them. We are accountable to them, and we're responsible to all of our residents, just as we are as councilmen, just as we are as commissioners, just as we are to everyone else. When we do this, we have to get it right. I don't think we have that. We don't know. As we've read here, option B, if we extend the bridge and remove the causeway, and it says at some future date, So we may have extend the bridge and still not remove the causeway for years and years to come because we have to have the money to remove the causeway. So then I guess we'll have both if we build the bridge and don't remove the causeway at the same time, but that's not on the table right now. So, but my point is this in this is that it's we as a body that have to decide this finally. We take what the experts tell us, and we have to finally decide what is the best to do for our residents, for us, for the state, for the lagoon. And that's the major answer. Not only do we have to improve the flow, but we have to get rid of the nutrients and as well, and we have to do it the best way that we can. And I don't believe that we have the information in front of us. I would like to see what the studies are. I'd like to go to these meetings. I'd like to hear it from them. Also, the money that has been spent, we've got the has-been tax for only so long. I would like an accounting. How much money has been spent? How much money has been brought in? Where did it go? How much more money is expected to come in so that when we do make this decision, option A, option B, option C, the money should be there for us to be able to do the project, rather than, yes, we decided we're going to extend the bridge and we're going to rip out the old causeway and we go, well, we need another half-cent sales tax for another 10 years because we don't have the money to do it. Because we spend it all on doing other things, which are all good, wonderful things, all the mucking and the things that, or demucking that we've done, and all the things that we've done, but we never see those things. We never see it. We have to sit here, we make a decision, we wear the big hat, our butts are on the line, and I just would like some more support to be able to do that. When I get a chance to go through and cross-reference all these letters, I'll have that information. But I think we need more. We need more. We're expected to be there and sit and wear the big hat, and we need the information to do it.
As far as the
That's my
project, all
2
that's
cents.
on the website, so.
Okay.
I'll get there.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Young. Anyone else that would like to speak? Anyone else that would like to speak?
Madam Chair, this is Georgiana. Could I speak for a moment, please?
Yes, Georgiana. Yes, Georgiana.
Well, first of all, I appreciate all the members' comments. And again, you are all digging into this issue and trying to understand the best movement forward. I will say, when DOT put option B on the table, so we did not have to go back all the way to the beginning, back to PD&E, which seemed very extreme. You know, we could lose the $18 million investment that has been spent on the project so far, and 15, 20 years that has been spent to get us to this point. It seemed very extreme. So this option B that is now on the table, it is really just an opportunity. It's an opportunity to potentially get that additional water flow. And as Councilmember Forrester pointed out, it requires 520. It requires 520 to be opened up. And it sounds like when it does become structurally deficient, the DOT will get it on a list, it'll be taken care of, and they're already considering causeway removal, which is really great. That'll be part of the DOT project. But option B, for us to be able to do this, they had to put the causeway removal as a separate endeavor, especially since they have now discovered that they don't own the causeway. But with that being said, we want to be sensitive to our port partners because we know how important the 401 bridge is, and we don't want that to slip. We do not want the schedule to slip. The one thing, the construction for the beach line widening and the bridge is in 2031. That is in the SIS cost feasible plan. So it's way out there. So we have time to be able to potentially get the additional 47 million that it's going to require to lengthen the bridge. However, Lorraine has to go to DOT's central office and ask for it. It may or may not be there. It sounds like it probably won't be there. But right now it's the 2.5 million that we would need in current year for the design that she's going to have to go to central office and ask for. We are deep in the work program development cycle. So if she needs to ask for money, now's probably the time for her to do it. They may or may not have it. I don't know. And if they don't have it, that means the project will sit there a little bit. But again, the right of way is in 2024. So we may be okay. So I say all this just to tell you that it is an opportunity. We have a window here where we could open it up and not have to go back to PD&E. So the causeway removal, we will have to get everyone together. Hopefully, if you do go with option B, best case scenario, we can work as a team. You know, the DOT works on the bridge and the widening, and then we get the environmental agencies at the table, the port, Brevard County, the TPO, and dig into it and figure out how are we going to do this causeway removal? How is it going to be paid for? And the coordination with the DOT as they're building it, because it kind of needs to go together. It needs to be coordinated together. So again, it's just an opportunity. We can either not miss a beat, keep going on with the current design as is, or go after that opportunity with some of those risks and some of the cost increases. Because as Dr. DeFries did say, and I agree, it's hard to put a value on the future, you know, of the lagoon. So I offer those comments. You know, I was hoping that the decision would have been a little easier, but it is a hard decision. It's a hard decision.
Oh, thank you, Georgiana.
I would like to make a motion to choose option B.
All right.
I'll
Do I have a
Madam Chair.
I'm the voting member.
Madam
Ray
Chair.
Cross, second.
Okay, you got to tell me who you are because I don't.
Mr. Forrester.
Okay, Mr. Forrester. Okay,
Yeah,
Mr. Forrester.
I'll second it with the proviso that we take another look at possible sea level rise as we go with option B and see if any design changes are needed to accommodate what may be the newer data on sea level rise.
Okay, is that
Madam
agreeable?
Madam
Yeah,
Chair?
Commissioner Smith.
Yes, that's agreeable. I would think that that would be, this is a broad motion to choose option B. I think sea level rise goes along with that. And I think that removal of the causeways is going to go along with that at some point in time. But right now, all we have is those two options. But if Mr. Forrester wants to put that on there, I have no objection to that.
All right.
Madam
Any
Chair,
discussion?
may I have a moment?
All right, please tell me who you are.
Sure, this is Commissioner Lober. Commissioner Smith, would you mind? I'm sorry.
All right, go ahead, Commissioner.
Commissioner Smith, would you mind withdrawing your motion? I have a slightly different motion that I think you'll be in favor of. That'll accomplish, I think, everything that everyone's trying to accomplish here.
Well, certainly I'd be willing to listen to what you have to say, obviously.
Sure. No, my motion would be that the TPO recommend that FDOT pursue option B with the caveat that FDOT continue working with the IRL NEP in more highly prioritizing increased flow and an increased bridge height reflecting both storm surge as well as a greater nonlinear increase in sea level than previously relied upon in developing and drafting new plans, and continuing to work with the NEP and the Space Coast TPO to explore options for existing causeway removal for intended implementation to run concurrent with any construction commencing on this span of State Road 528.
Geez, that's exactly what I was going to say.
So if you'd be so kind as to withdraw your motion.
All right.
Hopefully,
that's fine.
Would that work, sir?
I'll second Commissioner Lober's rather lengthy motion.
Well, we already have
Thank
a
you, sir.
motion and a second. So Commissioner Smith, you want to withdraw your motion?
I'm going to withdraw my motion, yes.
And is it agreeable to Mr. Forrester?
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, so now we're with Commissioner Lober's motion and a second by Commissioner Smith. Discussion. All right, does everybody understand the question?
This is Councilman Bailey.
Okay. All right, is everybody ready to vote? All right, is everybody ready to vote?
No. No.
All right.
Bailey would like to speak, please.
All right. All right, who wants to speak?
Bailey?
Okay, Mr. Daly.
Okay, Mr. Daly. Thank you, Madam Chair. I know a lot of people got their comments in before we actually had a motion. I just wanted to quickly comment that staff, I appreciate the analysis that they put together today with these options A and B and outlining the pros and cons. I do think that we're at a point that, you know, models and our estimates are going to continuously change. We're never going to have perfect information to make all these decisions. But I think that what we've done so far with option A is a preferable path moving forward. I think that staff spent a lot of time into doing that. We had a great presentation today by Laura. I was really impressed with that. So I really think that, no, I won't be in favor of option B because I think option A going forward probably be the most responsible way in putting all the factors together.
Okay. Anyone else would like to make a comment? We're in discussion. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, discussion.
All right, well, all right. Commissioner Allender, I believe that's you. Did you want to make a comment?
Yes.
Okay.
You agree with Commissioner Bailey? Okay. You know, option A, we go forward. You know, the letters that have come in just recently really did not present any new information, any new study, and the matter will be studied on and on and on. And option B, there's always the risk that FDOT will never come up with the money for further expenditure, and that the matter will be further delayed to who knows when. I think taking action now, where we are on option A, in my opinion, at this stage, would be the best course to take.
And if I can add, there's the opportunity cost if this doesn't move forward. That was a good point. I think that Commissioner Allender said is that, you know, if we lose the funding, there's a lot of lost time and opportunity. There's just too many uncertainties with option B, in my opinion, to move forward with it.
Madam Chair, may I have just a minute again? This is Commissioner Lober.
Yes, Commissioner Lober.
Sure, and I respect everyone's view on this, but I think with respect to uncertainties, it's better to face potential uncertainties than to face a certainty that flow is not going to be considered, and to face a certainty that the design that was presented is entirely reliant on a linear increase in sea level height. So whether or not those stand to improve and to what degree they may improve, I would rather run the risk with that than go with something that I think we've had the scientific community overwhelmingly, if not exclusively, have a consensus that we've got major concerns with what's been proposed. I agree that models may change, but I don't think that the question is whether something's going to change one significant digit or two significant digits. The real question is the reliance on the data something that's justifiable? Are we talking about something where the data that's being looked at is the wrong data? I think that Dr. DeFries, Virginia Barker, and the other folks that have spoken on this, including Ms. Koss, with respect to her concerns over storm surge, these are all things that, frankly, I've heard nothing from FDOT that gives me any degree of comfort. So I respect the concern that data may change, that studies may result in different numbers. But I don't think that the items that have been raised as issues today have been in any way surmounted. I think they're insurmountable if we go with option A. So I would rely on the discussion that we've had over the past hour or so at this point, in still suggesting that we go with option B with the caveats that I've mentioned.
All right. Anyone else? All right, so let's go ahead and vote. Lisa?
Allender?
No.
Bailey?
No.
Forrester?
Yes.
Commissioner Nardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Lober?
Yes.
Meehan,
Yes.
Yes. Nolan,
No. No.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes. Yes.
Young. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. Cullum. Yes. Cost. Yes. Did I miss anyone?
Is Deputy Mayor Johnson still with us?
So Lisa, is that everyone?
Is that everyone? Yes.
Yes, all right, so the yes have it, so the motion.
Yes, all right.
Item 7 is presentations, school routes analysis, and that will be Sarah.
Sarah.
We will make this very quick, I promise, guys. You're our fourth time presenting the same presentation, so I think we have it down to a science. I just want to give a quick intro, and then Aditya is our consultant on this project, and he will be taking over to present from DC. And so about 2 or 3 years ago, the city of Melbourne and the city of Palm Bay approached the Space Coast TPO to conduct a school routes analysis on all their elementary schools. This was after several deaths had occurred of school children walking to and from school, as well as also both the cities have had successful safe routes to school grant applications submitted. So when they made the request, we came back and we said we'd absolutely love to do a study for you guys. However, we can't do every single school at this time. What we proposed doing was a pilot project where each city was able to prioritize their elementary schools and present 4 schools for the project. And so with that, I'm going to allow Aditya to present on the study process and our outcomes.
Thank you, Sarah. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity for me to present the School Routes Analysis Project. My name is Aditya Inamdar. I'm with Kittleson Associates. We supported the Space Coast TPO with this project. I want to present the project background, a little bit of the methodology that we've used, and high-level recommendations we have made as part of this project. Next slide, please. So as Sarah said, this is meant to be a pilot project, and we had 9 schools, 4 of them in Melbourne, 5 in Palm Bay. Southwest, Middle, and Turner Elementary in Palm Bay are co-located. So we're really looking at 8 school campuses or sites and their associated study areas. And the first step that we did was to do a quick GIS analysis to look at the attendance boundaries for each of these schools and look at the walk zones that the school board had already established and do a quick GIS analysis to develop these study areas for each of the schools. So our focus was to kind of look at the existing conditions, identify issues and opportunities, and come up with recommendations for each school within that school's study area. Next slide, please. This slide shows the overall study process we used. We used a consistent process across all 8 school sites. We had established a technical committee at the start of the project. It had representatives from the cities of Melbourne, Palm Bay, Brevard County, FDOT, and we had a kickoff meeting last July in 2019 to kind of introduce the project, establish goals and objectives and the methodology. After that, in late summer of 2019 and early fall, we started collecting data, did some existing conditions analysis, and basically presented that data at school coordination meetings and field reviews for each school. So once we had all the data, we did identify issues and opportunities on our end, but we wanted to kind of truth check them and present them to the school staff and people who are there every day to understand if that makes sense, if we're missing any big issues and opportunities, and just to kind of truth check what's happening around the school. Then in fall of 2019, we did 4 school coordination meetings and field reviews. And then in spring of 2020, we did the remaining 4 school coordination meetings and field reviews. So for each meeting, we went to each school, met with the staff there. We met with the school resource officers, representatives from the cities and the county. And the next day, we would go out in the field to observe for ourselves what's happening around the school and the study area. After that, we came back and we developed draft recommendations for each school and presented those recommendations to the technical committee and the school staff to get their feedback, and revised those as the last step and documented the whole process in what we're calling the final assessment and implementation report. So we have a separate report for each school, and that's now posted online on TPO's website. Next slide, please. So going a little bit into detail at what we did at school coordination meetings, the purpose of these meetings was to, as I said, verify existing conditions data. So make sure that what GIS data is showing in terms of where sidewalks are or bike lanes or crossings, they're actually there, to gather additional information. So the images on the right you see are actual kind of maps that we had at these meetings. We had everybody around the table and mark out where kids are walking and biking, where are the crossing guards, where are the school buses coming in and out. So trying to understand how the circulation of the school is working in terms of all these different modes, where are the potential conflict points, what are the issues and opportunities. And we kind of did this, a similar exercise for a wider study area as well. Participants typically included school officials, so principal, assistant principal, or the school resource officers. We had staff members from the school board, especially the transportation department. We had city and county staff and FDOT representatives on schools that had kind of state road going through the study area, and then TPO staff and Kittleson staff were there as well. Next slide, please. The next day after the meetings, we conducted field reviews. We wanted to go out and see the walking and bicycle routes. We were observing the pickup and drop-off activity, so AM and PM both. We interacted with the crossing guards. So we had a team of 4 or 5 people, and we split up. So one person would be at the school observing pickup and drop off. Another person would interact with the crossing guard. Another person would look at kind of other major intersections, because kind of half an hour to 45-minute period in the AM and PM is when all the activity happens. So we want to kind of spread out and cover all our bases. And then between kind of the drop off and pickup activity, we would do kind of a windshield survey of the larger study area. And again, the participants included school board officials, city and county staff, and the representatives from FDOT. Sorry, next slide, please. So in the end, we came up with 148 recommendations for all schools combined, roughly about 18 to 20 per school study area. And as you can imagine, because these projects were focused on safe routes to school projects, we had a lot of sidewalk project recommendations, trying to fill in gaps, or widen sidewalks where it makes sense to kind of connect to an existing shared use path. We had many crossing recommendations, whether it's simple as restriping faded crosswalks or doing ADA improvements to curb ramps. And then we also made certain recommendations on school campus itself to kind of enhance the school circulation if it helps safety for walkers and bikers. We realized that the state level program for safe routes to school may not be able to fund the projects on school property, but because we were there and we were observing, we wanted to make the recommendations, and hopefully the school board or the charter school would be able to implement them in future. Next slide, please. So could you go to the next slide? There you go. So we have 8 reports, one for each school, that documents the entire process. We have detailed notes from the coordination meeting and the field reviews. We have all the maps, the recommendation tables, everything's in there. They're all on TPO's website. If you hadn't had a chance to take a look yet, please do and share with your constituents. And we would love to get your feedback on these reports as well. Next slide, please. And apart from these larger reports that document the whole process in detail. We have created a graphical summary report, again, one for each school, which basically includes all the maps, so existing conditions, some of the survey results from the student travel survey, some of the crash data analysis, and it includes the recommendation tables and the recommendation maps as well. These are also now posted on TPO's website. The final work product as part of this project, we developed a next steps report or a memo, and it contains a framework for implementation. So the 148 recommendations that we identified, we wanted to kind of tease out how the implementation would go for all of those recommendations. There's another separate framework for future school route analysis studies. As I said, this is meant to be a pilot study, so we want to make sure that we develop a framework for how these studies could be conducted in other jurisdictions across the county. And then the report contains appendices listing all those 148 recommendations by school and by type. We have a list of different safe routes to school programs and policies at federal, state, and local level. And we've also documented potential funding sources for implementation. Next slide, please. One thing we have included in the next steps memo are these two maps. The one on the left is for City of Melbourne, one on the right on Palm Bay. And what we realized as we started doing these studies is a lot of these study areas around the schools are kind of next to each other. And some of the recommendations that we were identifying, like sidewalk along some of the road or trail along the canals, they kind of continue across study areas. So we wanted to kind of map them all together and see what patterns emerge, because the cities or the county could kind of combine these recommendations into one single project and apply for funding that way. So the numbers and the colors here indicate the different project numbers and project types, and those are associated with that long list in the appendix for all the recommendations. Next slide, please. This slide shows the framework for implementation. So at the top, you have all the 148 recommendations. After this project is done, Space Coast TPO will continue to coordinate with the schools, FDOT, Brevard County, and the cities of Melbourne and Palm Bay. Basically, all the agencies that are going to be responsible for implementation. And we could kind of broadly categorize all the recommendations in 4 buckets. The school campus recommendations are the ones on school property, so it's probably going to be school funding that are going to implement it. The other 3 maintenance projects are kind of restriping, faded crosswalks, or some minor signs or landscape maintenance work. Those could be funded through local and state operating budgets. And then we have near and long-term infrastructure projects. Those are kind of your sidewalks or bike lanes or ADA improvements, and feasibility studies, which are projects that we think are a good idea, but we need additional vetting and information to kind of tease out whether they're feasible or not, like impacts on right-of-way or drainage or utilities. So all those are categorized under feasibility studies. And both these types, infrastructure project and feasibility studies, could be funded from kind of 4 buckets. They could be local and state capital improvement projects as a line item that might kind of take a while for implementation, but that's a funding source that could be utilized. There could be other state funding programs, including the Safe Routes to School program. There could be other grants and other nonprofit funding programs, especially for feasibility studies. And then federal funding through Space Coast TPO can be used for implementing some of these recommendations as well. Next slide, please. This slide shows the framework for future school route studies. So we are presenting this pilot project presentation to you and to other committees and school board, and we're getting feedback, and we'll use that feedback to kind of revise the methodology or the scope, and kind of come up with a revised idea of how to conduct them in future. And at the same time, we're kind of soliciting input from jurisdictions who might be interested in doing these kind of studies in their jurisdiction. And once we have jurisdictions that are interested, we will kind of develop some sort of a prioritization methodology to select which schools we would select first. Again, there could be a methodology that could be used based on strictly data or input from students and parents, based on crash history and stuff like that. We haven't really figured that one out, but depending on how many jurisdictions show interest and schools within them, we'll kind of develop a methodology, because we won't be able to do all the schools at the same time. And then finally, we'll kind of conduct additional school route analysis studies. So finally, the next steps memo I mentioned is also on TPO's website. And we are going to continue to present this presentation to cities of Melbourne and Palm Bay and the school board. And TPO is going to continue to monitor implementation and effectiveness of this pilot project. Next slide, please. I think this is the end of the presentation. So thank you again for this opportunity. And Sarah, I'll hand it back to you. We open up for questions or comments.
All right.
Questions or comments?
All right. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Aditya.
Oh, thank you. All right, so Sarah, is there anything else?
All right, so Sarah, anything else? So thank you, Aditya. You know, as it was mentioned, it's a pilot project, and so there is the potential of us doing this in the future. What we want to do over the next several years is monitor and see if it was effective, and because we don't want to continue to be putting money into a program that's not turning out actual implementable projects. And so over the next several years, we'll monitor, see if something comes out of them. If it does, then we can move into potentially moving into other municipalities. And so if you are a municipality that's interested in having a school routes analysis done, keep us in the know so that we can, if and when we get back to doing them, we can work, coordinate. So, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Any questions? All right. Seeing none, we're getting close to the end. Our next meeting is next month, October 8th at 1:30 at the Center for Collaboration. And I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and everybody have a safe trip home, and have a good week. Thank you. Four 17.